we are headed either toward super intelligence or the end of civilization. These are the words of Mr. Elon Musk at last year's beneficial AI conference in California when he was asked if he had any concerns about the scale and the speed in which technology is advancing. With this lighthearted message starting your day, good morning, everyone. Mr. President, congratulations are due. Mr. Secretary General, I'm always honored by your invitation. Excellencies, so wonderful to see you outside of the UN. The CIFA leadership and team, Hanifa Kuzima, wherever you are, distinguished participants of the UN family, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, my very dear friends. My intention in connecting with you all this morning is threefold: to share the various perspectives of future technologies, provide some facts on emerging markets, and thirdly, to speak about the power of the mind in creating future realities. For the purpose of integrating cross-field information toward the aim of looking deeper and perhaps more creatively at ourselves, at the future, with a more holistic lens, so that we are able to further enrich our individual understanding and therefore get one step closer to a more enriched preparedness for what is to come. To be, as it were, better fit for purpose in a rapidly changing world. Concerns about the future are being echoed by experts outside of the world of supercomputing. In fact, we heard a few comments just yesterday. OPIC, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation's Executive Vice President, David Bohigian, said in December last year that he is in fact afraid of a lack of imagination, saying, as we, the United States, went from a regional agrarian economy to a national industrial economy, there were major dislocations, including a civil war in the United States. As we see deep divisions now, and he's referring, of course, to geopolitical divisions, he says, I'm worried. As we go from a national industrial economy to an international information economy, we won't have the creativity to solve the problems. Ladies and gentlemen, the trumpet call here is the undeniable growth and speed of which technology is growing. Basically, has the potential to either bring the world to equilibrium, sustainable development, or to destroy it. Now, some information on advancements in technology. Last year, I touched on the message coming in from Silicon Valley about basically the pace of the fourth industrial revolution. So please allow me to expand. From year 2022 to 2025, every single person on the planet will be connected, all 8 billion people. Accelerating technologies will bring major changes to banking, education, healthcare, housing, transport, automation, farming, the list goes on. It is the convergence of technologies, explains Executive Chairman of the X Prize Foundation, Peter Diamandis, that are coming together like artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and blockchain technology that are being integrated to revolutionize industries, forging new business, and of course, as we've already heard, disrupting all sectors. A simple illustration. How many of you or your children go to the library today? None. But it wasn't so long ago that we all used to go to the library, right? So we have Google Scholar, we have Microsoft Academic, we have Wolfram Alpha, right? So many more virtual libraries. Major disruptive information technology. The same will happen for the present-day expensive costs of education, especially at university level, and in the not-so-distant future. Artificial intelligence will disrupt traditional education and bump the expensive tuition costs that exist today, allowing a child born to a family in Central African Republic to have access to the same quality education as a child born in Qatar or in the United Kingdom. We are moving from a world of scarcity where many things are expensive for large groups of people, to more abundance, mainly because of the less expensive costs of technology and therefore more availability and access. Dimandis says it perfectly. What used to take a government to do, now a company can do. What used to take a company to do, now one individual can do. He says the Internet of Things of everything, sensors, constellations, hyperloops, 3D and tunnel networks, robotics, namely the 5G world, will be connecting at gigabyte speed all over the planet, taking us into a world where, quote, listen to this, we will be able to know anything we want, anywhere we want, and anytime we want it. Fintechs, financial technology companies, are already changing traditional banking and private business, and they are already experiencing the largest consumer usage. China has a current usage of 84%, and India is at 76%, according to the World FinTech Report 2017. Dimandis puts it this way: we're seeing new and virtual currencies and the respective infrastructure in place for things like Ether, Ethereum, Bitcoin, and blockchain, redefining money, monetary transactions, and commerce, essentially bringing the demonetization of finance. Excellencies, diplomacy is changing as well. Being referred to as e-diplomacy, Denmark is heading this move by deploying the first ever digital diplomat or tech ambassador to the United States to delegate on issues to do with technology and digitalization. These changes are instigating big questions about the potential of a loss of jobs in already stifled employment and underemployment environments, major risk opportunities for the allowance of the misuse or exploitation of data, which we've already seen from Facebook, and the questionable, if not dangerous, contracts being signed by Google, causing their own employees to literally walk out based on issues of morals, ethics, and security. The question of who owns the technology or who should own it, equal adoption or equal use or the lack of ownership, is it a public good? Ownership could likely lead to greater levels of inequality, whether we're in a developed country or in a developing country. And what are the implications of super technology? Is it a post-capitalistic society, capitalistic society? Is it a world of abundance or a world of uncertainty? And when it comes to global development, and specifically the future of urbanization, we'll take a listen. The United Nations put out a fresh report on urbanization, stating that 68% of the world population is projected to live in urban areas by 2050. Saying that sustainable development depends more and more on successful management of urban growth, especially in low-income and lower middle-income countries, where the pace of urbanization is projected to be the fastest. Okay? Now, here's an example of how technology is being worked on for real-life urbanization and transport issues. Musk and his team are looking into transporting cars from over-congested roads to an underground tunnel via some elevator-type mechanism that will take your car underground, place it on a platform that will move your car about 130 miles per hour. So what would have taken you in Los Angeles traffic about 2.5 hours will take you about 6 to 10 minutes to get there. So instead of being frustrated in traffic, you can take a quick cat nap. Therefore, it's amazing what it can do in terms of real estate. And you could keep your home in the suburbs, right? Because usually you get more for your money in the suburbs anyway, and you don't have to worry about the commute time. And then your kids also can have a nice, still fun, safe place to play in the backyard. And this can directly alleviate many of the issues of cities and megacities, of course, especially in terms of congestion, infrastructure, and the elevated real estate and rental prices in major cities to more affordable price tags, we hope, by alleviating the demand side of the supply and demand dynamic. Now, let's turn to a few interesting facts on emerging markets, the future of emerging markets. And of course, so relevant that so many experts, in G77 and our dear ambassadors having been and being present. Some of The best information I was able to find on the future of emerging markets is from PGIM, formerly the Prudential Investment Management's latest report, titled Emerging Markets at a Crossroad. Here's what they deliver. In 2016, for the first time in history, developing countries filed more patents than developed nations. And of course, we all know that's mostly coming from China. Emerging markets currently account for 60% of global GDP growth. To put this in relative perspective, it was 50% about 10 years ago. Developing countries encompass 85% of the world's population. All of our UN folks know this. The average age in emerging markets is 26 years old as compared to the average age in developed markets, which is 46 years old. 413 cities within emerging nations will build half of the world's GDP by 2025. That is in just the next 7 years, ladies and gentlemen. Also, by 2025, half of the world's $1 billion and plus companies will be located in emerging markets. By 2030, developing countries will drive 90% of population growth and will contribute to 90% of middle-class spending growth. This is one quite impressive statistic here. By 2030, developing nations will be adding 1.7 million workers to the workforce per week. So what does this mean for investors, for investing, for the global development agenda, inequality, trade markets, interest rates, capital, commodities, inflation, national and regional power shifts, et cetera, right? This is a telltale sign that within the last 10 years, after the global financial crisis, while developed economies have been slowly in recovery mode, they've been slowly recovering, emerging markets have been in the business of growing. By the way, most eyes are looking at the local level, the city level, as opposed to the national level. So real story growth, and of course, a very good way to look at best practices. With the middle class rising and technology experts telling us that because of the speed with which technology is becoming more mainstream and less expensive, we can expect to steadily be moving away from a world of have and have-nots into a world of haves and super-haves. That's a perspective. Now let's touch on the workings of the human mind and bring it all together. There's a song, and you can laugh at my expense. There's a song that comes to mind by Michael Jackson that says, I'm starting with the man in the mirror, oh yeah, right? We won't have CIFA's Got Talent next year. Oh no, because it's not what we see or what we know about ourselves that actually is the problem, right? It's usually more often what we do not see and what we do not know about ourselves that is at the source of many issues. What we are not consciously aware of, usually repressed, not to get too psychological, but usually repressed somewhere in the psyche, and in many cases from childhood. And those things, the way we respond or react, I should say, either self-sabotage us, right? They self-sabotage, they hurt others, they damage or destroy our most important relationships, affecting our families, our communities, slipping over and impacting the well-being of our societies. And to put it very simplistically, here's why. Neuroscientists inform us that only about 10% of our behavior, our decisions, the choices we make, are made at the conscious level, only 10%. 90% of our decisions are made at the subconscious level of our mind. That's not to say it's a good or bad thing. That 90% is the reason you were able to park yourself in your driveway, for example, and forgetting how you even got home in the last 15 minutes, right? It's memory and repetition. And that's thanks to the genius of the subconscious mind. But when life coaches tell us that 80% of success in life is psychology, then it's something we need to look a little bit deeper into as our world begins to change so rapidly. Meaning if we need to best adapt in order to truly succeed, we better move away from the causes of confusion and fear and move into mental states of being more filled with clarity and therefore love. Because I believe that we walk through life either from a place of love or from a place of fear, right? So either from a place of love and all of its expressions like generosity, kindness, or we're acting from a place of fear and all of its layers like anger and jealousy. And we teeter-totter from one or the other depending on what's happening in our individual realities, whether we realize it or not. And it usually happens in an instant or generally, in most cases, not a conscious choice, unless we have such a deep sense of self-observation and self-awareness. Here's why I believe that this piece on the mind may seem to you far stretched or really removed from our topic of discourse, but it's not. In fact, it's the very piece that will help ensure the compassion, the courage, the empathy that will be required to build the personal conviction, the mutual trust, and the strong leadership needed moving forward. Let me expand. You don't have to believe in God to understand or appreciate what I'm about to share. I wholeheartedly believe and know that when we read teachings such as we are made in the likeness and image of God, I've come to understand on a very visceral level that this speaks to the divine power that we have all been given. It's our birthright, the power to create. And I believe this power and likeness is the human imagination. The ability and the privilege of having the power to literally construct new realities from the place in our brains that neuroscientists call the neocortex. It is the source of our imagination, of empathy, of impartial judgment, and the part of the brain that allows us to move beyond our ego, beyond our pride, beyond our critical judgment, into being more free to imagine ourselves greater, our world better. And it gives the compassion to help us to understand people and other people's behaviors, perhaps done by pressures, more often than not, derived from the primitive parts of ourselves. Neuroplasticity informs us that the brain is constantly changing and being reshaped throughout our lives by both our experiences and our thoughts. Of course, it's the focus of our awareness that determines which brain networks are strengthened and which are weakened. So what does this all mean? We are at a place in life where the world is reimagining itself. The world has never gone through so much change in such a compressed period of time. This is not only happening with computing, it's happening at the governmental level, as we're seeing, and at the individual level. And we have no roadmap. Technology is increasing intelligence levels and therefore the growing awareness of people. Spiritual leaders are saying that the evil in the world is getting darker, and yet the goodness of humanity is shining even brighter. The divide is growing stronger. Our job is to observe more clearly without getting caught up, without pointing the finger, not to this leader or that government. Our job is to be more aware while becoming more self-aware to better strategize. This gives us an opportunity to choose what it is we want to focus on. Do we get depressed and cynical and give it more energy? Or do we choose to become wiser and become part of the magic of the great human spirit and will and imagination that can transform life itself? Yes, people, and thank you, Daniela, wherever you are this morning, and always will be at the foundation, not technology. And Tony, you said this. Actually, I think all of you echo this. Not emerging markets, not robots. The best life coaches in the world remind us that even if the body has limitations, the human mind does not. There is greater public pressure and increasing economic argument for responding to pressing challenges of inequality. The extremes of wealth and the depth of poverty that have risen globally provide stark realities for leaders of government, business, and civil society. The power of the internet to vividly project the phenomenon puts each sector under the spotlight to respond swiftly and convincingly to the people. Another shift example is that today there's more wealth in the hands of private individuals who are investing and driving accelerated change for good, more than ever before. And this is one of the core reasons why we are here at CIFA every year, and why member states and why the United Nations work so hard in doing what they do every day. So with all the superhuman technology that is poised to bring us into a whole new world, there is nothing more super or more precious and valuable than the human being and the human mind's ability to create. I think we are already superhuman because we are born infinite and limitless in what we can do, what we can imagine, and what we can manifest and make real. Because it's people like you who don't just passively perceive the world, you actively generate it. From your past experiences, your sensory perceptions, and of course your beliefs. The world we experience comes more from the inside out than it does from the outside in. The philosopher Alan Watts puts the concept that we are all connected, that we have individual influence in such a beautiful way that none of us can deny. He says, or he said, what you do is what the whole universe is doing here and now. In the same way that the wave is something that the whole ocean is doing. So as we move into a robotics world, it makes all the more importance to capture the humanity in each other, which brings us closer to our own humanity. More truths are being revealed, and truth exonerates, truth galvanizes. From truth comes freedom, and freedom is life-giving. We are here to move away from suffering and walk toward fulfillment. Because knowledge expands the mind and experience communicates to the body. The world needs a new story to move it forward. And my message here today at CIFA is to say that we have to look at the probable solutions from all relevant perspectives so that we can indeed ensure that no one is left behind, but by first ensuring that we don't leave ourselves behind by not knowing ourselves first. And while some tech geniuses figure out ways to get humans to live on Mars or the moon, fearing some inevitable destruction of our planet, I say, let us pull our imaginations together. Let us remain present. Let us be focused and determined on creating the best possible life and future for ourselves and for others on this beautiful planet Earth that gives us everything and more we could ever need. Then from this synergized determination of strong people working together and trusting each other and life, are then more able to allow life to become what it truly is, a celebration of itself. And then the robots can serve us champagne. Thank you very much.